So I put a few kilometers on the Canyon Spectral now, and I think I'm finally ready to give a honest review. And by the title, I'm pretty sure you can tell I really love this thing. Holy rat! Oh my god! So we'll start at the heart of the bike, because that's really what you're picking over other brands. This one has welds, and it has no paint on half, which is really good because statistically speaking, I guess there's a 50% chance that a scratch is going to bother me. It has a really stiff and solid feel for an alloy frame, and probably the first thing I noticed when I got on the trail was just the lack of rattle or anything, and it just wanted to be smashed into stuff and never sounded like it was struggling. I'll mention the weight up front. I think it's running at about 16.2 kgs, how I've got it set up, which on paper sounds kind of heavy, but to be honest, on the trail, it doesn't feel heavy at all. It rides really light and playful. It's only maybe when you're trying to lift it over a fence to get to my trails over there that you sort of notice that weight, but a lot of carbon bikes are around the 16 kg mark anyway if they're nice and burly, so I'm fine with the weight. What the f is that? Oh, God's sake. Ah! Oh, I am riding like a muppet. Looking down at the top tube, it kind of looks a little bit skinny, especially compared to like the carbon Spectral or James's common cell with its girthy tube. But don't be fooled, it is plenty solid and plenty strong, so I'm not worried about that either. It really fits my requirement of being playful absolutely perfectly. I chose to size down, so this is a size large when I'm kind of more of an extra large human, so it's definitely on the short side. I believe Canyon's listing the reach at 481, which, just a side note, I'm like 99% sure it was 485 when I bought it because I looked at that spec sheet for so long. So unless Canyon has just slightly changed the geo for the 2023 version, which is like the exact same look, but just their listing is 2023, so it's a new bike. Or I'm going completely crazy, which is, you know, is certainly possible. The chainstays are kind of on the shorter side of middle of the road at 438 mil. That could probably be considered a little bit too short for some people, but I don't think I ever really feel like this is unstable. It's definitely playful in the corners and it snaps around them good, easy to manual and all that, but I guess the only time is maybe when you're in the bike park, like going real fast down some rough stuff, it starts to feel like it wants to move around maybe more than a longer high pivot kind of bike would, but to be honest, you're kind of working the bike above its pay grade at that point, so, you know, you just got to deal with that. I'd rather have it playful on all this stuff than have it ultra stable at that high speed. It's also only a 160, 150 bike, so it doesn't really belong on those really big rough trails. The 64-degree head tube angle is perfect. I absolutely love it. It's so capable on the steep, rough stuff, and when it gets, you know, gets a bit sketchy. It does get a little bit of that slack head tube angle feeling when you're going slow, but to be honest, it's 100% worth it for the stability going anywhere faster than 3 kilometers per hour. I can now actually confirm it takes a beating after going through the South Island, 160 kilometers of rocky, brutally rough trails. All the pivots stayed tight, which seems like a simple thing, but you would be surprised. Yeah, it wants to get smashed into things, I think. My first recommendation when you buy a bike like a Canyon, or really any bike that hasn't been assembled by like a top shop, you know, is pull the whole thing apart, put grease on everything that needs grease, and then use a torque wrench and torque it all back up to the recommended force. I did that to this, when I got it, I put a bit more grease on the axles, on the crank spindle, in the headset, all that sort of stuff. We have quite corrosive dirt in New Zealand, so anything that isn't greased like pretty severely is going to rust and seize eventually, so it's going to be super careful about that. When I got back from the South Island trip, I noticed a little bit of creaking in the cranks and stuff, so I decided to just go overboard and strip the whole thing down. Turns out the creaking was actually just the seat post being a bit dry and creaking in the frame, but I redid everything, re-torqued it back up, and there was surprisingly little amount of dirt in and around the pivots. There's a little bit pressed on the seals of the bearings and like a little bit around there when I undid it, but considering the amount of wet riding I've done, I'd say that's a pretty solid effort, and I wouldn't be too worried about taking this thing out all winter and then doing, you know, 1 or 2 big overhauls a year. The only other really annoying noise is this Ergon saddle. It creaks where the rails join the base of the saddle, I guess. A couple drops of chain lube or a little bit of lubricant spray in there fixes it for a couple weeks, and then it just comes back. I don't know, like, it's not so big of a deal. I'll probably end up swapping it out for something else, but it is actually decently comfortable for a stock saddle. And speaking of saddles, let's talk about climbing. It's fine. It's not amazing. It's probably slightly worse than the Scott Genius I had before, but when you lock out the shock, you can kind of get it to a place where I'll be perfectly happy slogging for hours up a climb, but you're not going to win any cross-country races on it. And you wouldn't really expect that. I mean, it's a fair trade-off for how well it performs going down, so it really doesn't bother me. Technical climbing can be a little bit tricky with the low hub engagement, and I don't know if it's low or it's got long cranks or if that's just a combination of both, but I do tend to strike roots and stuff more often than I have in the past. And once again, that's probably a trade-off for being low and stable when you're going down, but just something I thought I'd note. It is certainly possible that I'm just not good at climbing though, and I'm perfectly willing to accept that. Why didn't I number these? The thing I was most concerned about when ordering this bike was the wheels. These are the Deity Swiss all mountain wheels with the 370 LN hubs that use the star ratchet system rather than the 3-pawl kind of old school thing. I could not find any information anywhere on what these rims were. Like, I have absolutely no idea. And when a bike comes with an unknown rim, even if it's from Deity Swiss, I'm immediately pretty skeptical. I'm going to preface this also by saying that I am a wheel's worst nightmare. A pretty large quantity of human that is passionate about taking the corner from the inside, passionate about the out of a whip, and not that interested in bringing it back. So keep that in mind when I say I think these wheels are really good. They feel pretty stiff, especially for alloy rims. They are a little bit on the heavier side. In fact, I would go as far to say as they are heavy. But those are great trade-offs considering that I've done 160 Ks of rocky riding and there's not a single dent on them, and they're still running true, and they haven't even been touched since they came out of the box. They came perfectly true. They're just, yeah, they're really good. The 370 hub is nice, and I think it's a really good entry-level hub. The engagement's a little bit low, but you can obviously swap the star ratchet, so that's an easy fix. I like how it's almost silent, and in most of the videos, when I'm cruising on like slightly louder dirt, you can not hear the hub at all, and that's really cool, especially for the GoPro stuff. I was warned that the 54 tooth ratchet can suffer from slipping, especially for like slightly bigger guys, so I think the 36 tooth might be the sweet spot also to balance out pedal kickback and stuff like that, so I'll try to pick up one of those soon. But the fact that I haven't done it yet is a good sign that you'll probably be pretty happy out the box and it won't be too big of a deal. The next most important thing for me was suspension, and mainly the fork. I feel like I've not really ever owned a fork that I could say was like actually great until now. I mean, I'm really happy with this thing. It's nothing crazy, like it's not gonna blow any top of the line factory Fox 38 out the water or whatever, but it's a Lyrik Plus, Lyrik Select Plus, so what are you gonna expect? I don't think small bump sensitivity is off the charts, but what I love is that I can basically go into anything, take the high line, dive like into the weirdest lines on the trail, and it never really surprises me, it just does its job. It took barely any time to set up. I've barely played around with it apart from changing air pressure since, and it just does its job. I don't think anyone would be unhappy with this out of the box. Like, yeah, it might not blow your mind, but you're not going to be unhappy. And it's probably not even in the top 5 things I will upgrade next. Like, I'm happy as it is. And to be honest, that's what I'd say about the rear shock for the most part as well. There has been a couple times in slightly rougher stuff where I'm kind of like, is this setup perfect for me? But I've tried quite a few things and I don't think I'm going to get it any better, and it's perfect in 90% of the situations. So I think that's just the fact that it's a Select Plus and it doesn't have high and low speed compression, all that sort of stuff. That's just probably a limitation where I can't get the absolute perfect setup. Probably in my top 5 upgrades would be going to the DVO Jade X coil, just because I think with a progressive coil on it, you could probably increase the stability of the bike a little bit while retaining the playfulness. So yeah, that's definitely up there on my list. Let's quickly talk about drivetrains. Now, they don't really excite me that much because, to be honest, a good drivetrain is just one you never even think about. I don't really care about wireless and all that sort of stuff. Just give me something that shifts consistently and doesn't surprise you, doesn't slip and all that sort of stuff. Well, I certainly noticed this off the start, and I'm sure a lot of you remember my first rides on the bike, me complaining about this. It was pretty garbage. I was not impressed at all. And I kind of knew what the cause was pretty quickly, and that is the SX chain that came on this. I mean, everything else here is GX. Why did Canyon not up the price by like 30 bucks and put a GX chain on it? That's the first thing I do out of the box, is throw the SX chain in the fire and, no, don't do that, it won't melt. Throw it in the bin or recycle it or something, and then get a GX chain and you'll be happy. The Code R brakes are fantastic. They are really good. They needed a huge bleed out the box, but you kind of got to expect that. But take that into account if you have to take it down to your local bike shop. Add that cost on top, because I'm sure they're going to need them when they turn up. I can't speak for how they're going to go after a few services, because I have had issues with SRAM brakes in the past, getting sticky pistons and all that sort of stuff, and they're a little bit of a hassle. But for now, they don't need to be bled as often as my Shimano Dior 4 pots I used to have. And they had a lot more power, that's for sure. I can probably see myself going with the organic pads next time, because I just don't know if I need the bite of the metal pads, and also I don't like the sound, because you lot can hear me braking in the GoPro videos, and I don't need that kind of judgment in my life. I swapped the front tyre to an Assegai straight away. I'm sure the DHR2 is fine in the front. I know people like that setup, but for me it just doesn't look like a front tyre tread, and the Assegai is kind of my favourite front tyre I've ever ridden, so did that straight out of the box. And I'm running Cushcore in the back, more for the feel it gives rather than like the necessity, because I think these rims would be perfectly fine without it, but it just adds a little bit of stability to the side wall of the back tyre. And I have one lying around, so why not? So I'll quickly touch on some of the upgrades I made basically straight away. I got the Bontarger 35mm bars that I got off Facebook Marketplace for a good price. I think they're a little bit too stiff for me. I'll probably pick up some Tidal alloy bars at some point. I love the look of these, but yeah, they're just a bit brutal on the arms, so I don't know, I'll keep them for now, but that's probably on the cards. The Tidal stem is a stem, and it does stem things while looking good, so I mean, there's not much to complain about there. The Deity Defttrap pedals are really, really good. I'm super stoked on them. I don't really feel the need to shell out the extra cash for T-Max anymore. And what's next on my upgrade list? Definitely a 210 1-up dropper post. This one works absolutely perfectly, like no complaints. It's just I've got long legs and I need a little bit more. But I actually put up the seat a little bit and it still doesn't really get in the way on steep stuff, so might be able to get away with it for a little bit longer. And I might get an oval chainring, because I like the concept of them and I kind of want to give it a good go, so that's probably another one that will make its way onto here soon. Oh my God! But this bike is really just stupid good for the money. Like coming from a bike shop where I got staff deals, it was pretty brutal having to face full retail price. I looked around for quite a while and this was by far the best value for money. And now I'm not sure about the KISS like stabilizing steering thing on the new Spectrals. That's a bit weird, so I'd probably just get the standard one. And don't shy away from alloy. I'm not a carbon hater, but I think there's something special about being able to throw your bike in a bush or crash or whatever and not be too stressed about it, you know? Especially the fact that 50% chance it's not going to bother you. So to sum up, it's the best all-rounder bike I've ever owned. It's playful, it's fun. It does start to feel a little bit unstable when you're going through the biggest bike park stuff like in Queenstown, but that's to be expected for a glorified trail bike basically. Now, obviously we're not affiliated with Canyon. I just wanted to talk about my bike for 10 minutes, so I can give you an honest statement that I do recommend this bike. I really do. So that's about it really. I'm getting sunburnt, so I need to go inside. Make sure you subscribe, drop any comments below if you have any specific questions about the bike, I'm happy to answer. Please like the video, it's really, really helpful, so I really appreciate that if you did. And yeah. Oh, and also if you want to see the bike in action, check out the South Island trip if you haven't already. It's all on the playlist, so it will autoplay and you'll suddenly lose 2 hours of your life. I'll see you next time.